Okay, welcome to this live sculpting session. In this one, I'm going to be taking a single photo reference. In this case, it's bodybuilder pose, Bob. Is it Cicerillo? In Spanish, it would be Bob Cicerillo. And just an interesting pose. I try to save these poses that I think would make good studies on my Instagram page, and so that's just where I've saved that. If you're interested in following me on Instagram, you can find me at Andrew Joseph Keith 15 on Instagram. And so to do this, I just have a simple wire armature, aluminum wire armature. I think this is 18 gauge aluminum wire. There's several methods of how to build this. This method you can find on the Proco 3D YouTube channel. If you just search wire armature Proco 3D, it'll come up the specific method that I used to build this one. And again, it's about 18 gauge, pretty thin aluminum wire. And I do have some Chavant NSP clay that I've warmed up, so it's nice and soft right now. And this is the medium clay mixed with just a little bit of hard. And I like to mix in just a little bit of hard because I prefer a little bit firmer of a clay, but it makes it difficult at the beginning stages, so I start off with it warmed up. I just warmed it up on the lowest setting that I could put in the oven, and now I have some nice warm, soft, malleable clay that I can work with. If you're interested in sculpting, then definitely check out my sculpting courses. There's also some free PDFs on the figure sculpting course and the portrait sculpting course that will get you started. It has all of the free assignments as well as the premium assignments, but you can start off with just the free stuff if you haven't yet invested in the premium, and that'll allow you to get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is try to capture the pose. Let's actually zoom in just a little bit more. And I'm trying a new background. I'm trying a white background, so let me know if you guys prefer the white or the black background. I've heard that that lighter colored videos do better than dark videos, and almost all my videos are in black background, so for all I know, that's why my YouTube channel doesn't have, a million followers. It's just because of black background. But let's see, so we're just going to start off by capturing the pose. So his shoulders are turning this way, this arm's coming up and a little bit out, kind of twisting in. And this arm is back behind the head. Let's see, back here, going very much forward and behind the head. Head's tilting a little bit this way, and let's see, the shoulders are nice and broad, so I'm gonna make sure I give room for that. And there we have, I think, what is basically the pose. Let's see. So the hips I think are more turned one way and the shoulders the other way, so I'm going to make sure I get that twist in because that's something that makes this pose interesting. Okay. And I'm also going to kind of change I only have one image, only one reference image, so I have to make the best guess that I can and try to get it to balance. So I just want to get a good feel for the structure, the skeleton or armature, before I start adding clay. And so I think this feels pretty good. And with this, because it's a bodybuilder, we have plenty of room. There's going to be a lot of mass in this sculpture. But I like to start off with the primary forms, the pelvis, the rib cage, and the head. So I'm just going to start adding pieces of clay to build up those. And if you guys have questions or anything, or comments or topics or things of interest you'd like me to talk about, I'd be happy to do that. And we'll just get hopefully a decent gesture, steady sculpture sketch done by the end of this. So quite a bit of mass up in the chest, so I can go ahead and add a decent amount of clay there in the rib cage. Make sure I'm focused. The first live stream I did yesterday, I was not focused the whole time, and I didn't do it. Somebody's saying no foil. Yeah, these smaller studies, I don't use aluminum foil, but if I was doing it in like a polymer clay that I was going to bake, which maybe I'll do in a little bit later. Let's see, this arm I want to lift up a little bit more. If I was doing a polymer clay, then I probably would use aluminum foil, but for this one it's small, and it's a non-dry modeling clay, so I'm not too worried about it, about using that much clay. This is so small I probably won't use that much clay anyway. It's only maybe not even a pound. Quite a bit under, actually. Let's see. So let's also start to give some thickness to the leg. It also will be pretty thick. And I want to try to follow the gesture of the forms. Let's see. In a way that looks good. There's quite a lot of mass in the glutes, the buttocks. These bodybuilders, the largest, I think the largest muscle is the gluteus maximus, as far as by mass. And then the longest muscle is, I think, are the quad muscles, the leg. Maybe it's the sartorius. It kind of twists. I forget. Anyway, but there's going to be a lot of mass. This is, a massive figure, so I want to build out that mass. And again, because I only have one angle, it's kind of ambiguous whether this leg here is right next to the knee or if it's out. I suspect it's closer, like they're more aligned, but just to make it a more balanced and interesting sculpture, I'm going to kind of tuck this leg behind and bring this foot out a little bit more. And that's kind of the judgments you have to make when you're taking a single photo reference and turning it into a sculpture study of the entire figure in 3D. You have to make some judgments on what you think, where you think the masses should go, and exactly how the joints are turned in space. And so, let's see, once we get a little bit more mass, then we'll start to refine and define the details. And I like these small gesture studies. They can be really fun exercises. Usually take about an hour. I don't know if I'll spend a full hour on this one, but you can usually get quite a bit of visual information in place in an hour. And with sculpting, so many parts of sculpting take a long time. So, and I'm kind of a sprinter. I like quick things, which is ironic because sculpting is like the marathon running of the arts. It just takes forever. But I really like, quick sketches. Let's see. I'm going to widen out the back, the latissimus dorsi muscles, which are really present. We've got the rib cage coming across. And with these small studies, I try to do the whole thing by hand without any tools, because tools are really for slowing things down, being more precise. But with this, I'm just trying to create something that's a simplification. Let's see, how's that looking? Okay, so I'm seeing that. Let's see, I'm bending the back a little bit much. Let's get the head, get some mass for the head and neck. Started. Maybe I will grab just one tool just for some of the areas like the neck. I just have a hard time making sure that that's not moving over into the arm, and I want to have space, so I'll just use maybe a butter knife to change up those forms a little bit, or to just push in that neck. Okay, so we got the head. Actually bring this up a little bit. With everything in the beginning, you want to think simple, so I'm just basically doing cylinders for the arms and legs that just follow the gesture that I'm seeing. Then we'll add the muscles, which is really that's really what this pose is about and this study is about, is finding the muscles. But we'll add those thoughtfully as we develop the forms after we have those primary forms of the cylinders and the gesture in place. And then sometimes as I add the clay, the pose will change a little bit. So every once in a while I'm setting it down and then checking to make sure that the gesture is still what I want it to be. I feel like this arm needs to come back here. How long should I take for one of those tiny studies? About an hour. I would give one of these an hour to 2 hours for these small, quick gesture studies. They're really just to try to understand the pose and to get something, interesting down in a short amount of time. They're not really supposed to be a super long, drawn-out sculpture. Though you could, if you really like what's happening, you could take it to you could finish the sculpture. Okay. Let's just finish up this. And because this is Chavant medium mixed with just a little bit of hard, as it sets up, it does give some support to the armature so that it's not constantly changing. Like as I'm moving things around and adding clay, I'm sometimes bending the armature in different directions. But then once it has one layer of clay, then it becomes a little bit firmer and I'm not messing things up as much as I continue to add things. Oh, this one comes up and then the toes come down, so I'm going to do that. Down a little bit. And I set it down to make sure that it's still relatively balanced. It feels like it's not as balanced as it was. He's more upright. Somebody's asking, hi Andrew, can you share wood base details? Wood base, so I assume you're talking about how to make a wood base for a sculpture. Let's see, do I have some? So if you're talking about a wood base for a like an armature or a sculpture like this, sculpture like this, usually what I do is I just put either a nail or a screw into the base, and then I wrap the wire tightly around it, and then make a base for a sculpture study. That's what I would use for that if I don't want any external support for the armature. So it's just a screw, and then tightly I'll wrap the wire armature around that screw with some additional aluminum wire. So that's usually the type of base that I use for these sculpture studies. And that's good, and it works really well for if you want to make a mold and cast it, because it doesn't have that external support getting in the way. If you're talking about a base for like a finished sculpture and you want to make it out of wood, like a dark wood, like walnut, looks really nice as a base, then it's really just finishing the piece of wood to a nice finish. And then usually I'll drill a hole in the base and then countersink a bigger hole so that I can put a nut or a bolt into the sculpture. I'll put a pin in the sculpture, usually a 1/4 inch pin, so that I can screw the sculpture into the base from the bottom, and that way you have a really secure connection onto that wood base. But then it's just a lot of sanding and making sure that you're finishing that base so that it looks nice if it's going to be the finished base for a sculpture. And I've done that. I've done quite a few wood bases. They look nice, but I don't think they present as well as stone. Usually black granite is what people want to see for the base for their sculptures. Okay, now I'm going to start to add more of the muscles to this sculpture. Got some different color clay mixed in. Okay, so we got this big, thick front quad muscle over here. And I'm starting, I start from the angle that I can observe, so I want to make sure that I have that accurately represented. And then once I have that, then I can use that to judge the other angles off of. These studies are great because it gives you an idea of what you don't know. Like when I'm turning this to the side, like here I can just observe the reference. Then when I turn it to the side, I need to invent whatever this silhouette looks like from this side. And you know, if I haven't sculpted a lot or haven't observed the figure a lot, then that's going to be a really tricky thing to do. Even if you do have experience, it's always or it can frequently be a very difficult thing to know exactly how to represent the muscles and the joints in a specific pose that you haven't sculpted before. So I'm just trying to think about how are those muscles wrapping around the figure. And I might also, I'm going to do this, I'm going to draw a center line for the rib cage. So the rib cage is kind of going this way, and the pelvis is going this way. Most of the twisting is happening here in the midsection, but the pelvis is facing one way, and the rib cage is facing another way. So the pelvis is like that, and then the rib cage is over here like that. And then the twist is happening here. And so I have to take that twist into account as I'm thinking about how these muscles are wrapping around the figure. There would be these large muscles at the back. There's kind of two columns that run down the back, and they would be massive on this bodybuilder. That's where a lot of the mass of the back comes from. Then it transitions into that latissimus dorsi muscle. That's the wing muscle that gives you that A frame, that triangular shape, upside down triangle shape, bodybuilders. Then we got this glute that's wrapping. This one's stretched quite a bit. This glute is coming and stretching around. And the calf muscle is like squished. This upper leg is squishing this down on both sides. Go ahead and add a little bit more to the head. So he says, "Hola desde Colombia, gracias por compartir." De nada. De nada. Hello from Colombia. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, it's cool that so many people from so many different places can observe and learn from wherever you're at. Let's see, this is he's kind of looking down. So let's have him looking down. And then we have the just massive muscles of the tricep coming forward quite a bit. And I'm just taking, I'm taking a little piece of clay, rolling it into a coil, and then trying to lay it along where I know the direction the muscle is traveling. Let's get that deltoid shoulder muscle in place. This would be very squished on this backside because that deltoid is kind of pressing. Right there. Let me grab a piece of wood so that I can set it here like that, and that way I can move this without turning the whole table, just to kind of get a sense of what's happening. Let's add some more to this calf muscle that's coming down here. Let's see, this wants to tilt. I'm trying to decide what it is that's making this unbalanced. I want it to be balanced. Okay, let's go ahead and continue with the fun part of the sculpture, which is the muscles. So this back leg is even thicker. What I have, put those muscles on the back of the leg. We have the tendons are coming down. Go. Let's look at a little bit more what we're seeing, but it's very 2D. You see, I'm really just focusing on it from this angle, and then I can address it from the other angles. I'll do that in a little bit. Over here we have these muscles of the inner thigh that take up a lot of mass. They're not flexed right now, so there's not that much definition in these. They're just kind of loose and filling up this space on the inner thigh. And let's wrap some more mass around this lat. That thickness there. We haven't even gotten to the chest and arm muscles yet. Let's see, why is it? I'm going to take this knife and tuck in that calf muscle right there. And I felt like the foot was just a little bit that this part from here to here was just a little long. In fact, it still feels a little bit long, so I'm just going to push things forward and try to move that. So I want that to feel right, or to be right. There we go. And now let's put the pecs, because those are a really big muscle group, big important part of what's happening with this pose. And they're wrapping around, so with that pectoralis muscle, it wraps around and then attaches up and mixes right in with the shoulder muscle. And so I want to make sure that that's happening, that the chest is going and then blending with the shoulder muscle up around the back. There we go. Very stretched. And then this one, same thing. And I have the mistake I generally make, and I just made it here, is that I make the chest muscle too high up, the attachment of the chest muscle too high, but it actually comes down the rib cage quite a bit, so I'm going to try to fix that. Same thing on the other side, and then we'll just, like I said, we'll wrap this around. So there's the shoulder on the other side. I'm going to wrap it around and then bring it down for the chest muscle. Go. And some more mass for this lat over here, which we can see coming out behind the chest. And I'm going to fill in some of this space that I know would be full, more full than what I have right now. Try to round things off and get a sense of what's happening all the way around. Let's see, I'm going to bring this head up just a little bit. Looks like he's looking down too much. Let's add some thickness to the neck. Now the fun part is kind of inventing these muscles as you're going around. So we have that shoulder. It's wrapping up into the pec. We've already started that. And then on this side we've got the bicep. Bicep over here. Give an indication of that. And I feel like this shoulder comes out even more than what I have. Over here. Somebody's asking, do you use water while sculpting? This is an oil and wax-based clay, so it's not a water-based clay. If I was using a water-based clay, a natural clay, then usually I would just have the clay be nice and moist at the beginning, like a lot of, be very hydrated, or a lot of water mixed in. And then I wouldn't use a lot of water while I'm actually doing the sculpting. Maybe once in a while, but usually you want to kind of let it dry, especially with these quicker, smaller studies. Though it does, water-based clay does dry pretty fast when the studies are this small. So it needs a little bit of mass if it's gonna retain its moisture. But if I was doing water-based clay, I wouldn't have the wire armature that I started with. I would figure out another way to do the armature. It's just a different ball game. The water-based. Let's see, we got this muscle that's poking through. So here you can see it's starting, it's starting to come together. Still has quite a bit to go, but this is kind of a fun part when you can see that you're starting to get closer to what you're observing. And let's come and add some thickness over here to this part of the inside of the thigh on this side, so that this leg isn't so two-dimensional. At which situation do you use water-based clay? Well, so water-based clay is a lot cheaper. It's natural. You can just dig it up from the ground, and then and sometimes you can just sculpt from the clay that's from the ground if you can find a clay deposit that are all over. So it's cheaper. Even if you do purchase it, it's less expensive. And if you have access to a kiln where you can fire the sculpture, then it's really great to use water-based clay, because then you can fire it and have a finished sculpture that's as hard as stone. And so if you have access to a kiln, or you can rent kiln time, then I think that it is worthwhile to sculpt with water-based clay. I just don't have a kiln yet. I'll probably try to get one at some point in the not too distant future, but I don't have one yet. And so until I get one, I'd like to, I just prefer working with oil-based clay, because I like the way it feels, and it doesn't get my studio all dusty with the clay. When it dries out, the dust gets everywhere, and it's not good to breathe in. So you want to keep it wet. And okay, this shoulder is also like that. Let's see, this arm's kind of twisting. Let's try to get the the arm more developed. So there's the forearm. And the wrist is turned this way, turned in towards the head. The wrist is in the palm of the hand. Then the tricep, people don't realize how much of the arm is tricep, especially the upper arm. Everybody focuses on the bicep, the biceps, but the tricep makes up quite a bit of mass in that arm, especially in this pose. You can see even on this one where the bicep is a lot of it, that tricep is making up quite a bit, just about half of what you can see. When I tried to use clay on a wire skeleton like you're doing now, my clay cracked from everywhere. Was I doing something wrong, or was it because of the quality of the clay? So that's probably because you're using water-based clay. So the clays that I use are they're oil-based, and so if you're gonna use water-based clay, then usually you'll do the armature a little bit differently. Usually you'll use you can use let's see. So like a nail like this. This is a nail that I made a tool out of, but it's just a nail. And you can drive that down into a piece of wood and remove the top of the nail. And then once the sculpture starts to harden and becomes firm, you can just pull the nail out of the sculpture. So that's what my friend Leroy Transfield, who's a great sculptor, he uses that method of armatures. So he doesn't do this this aluminum wire figure for exactly that reason, because he wants to fire the sculptures, and because water-based clay, as it dries, it'll crack if there's armature inside of it. So yeah, what you want to do is just use metal rods as the armature, because they can be removed once the sculpture starts to just firm up a little bit, but it's not totally dry. You can just use some pliers and then just pull out metal rods. And so that's what I would recommend doing if you're using water-based clay. And then if you have a wire armature, which I do recommend being able to build and understanding, what you want to do with the armature is you just use it as a reference for the proportions and everything, and you just have it separate from your sculpture, and then you can pose the armature exactly how you want the sculpture to be, and then you can just use this as a way to check your proportions and everything, but you don't actually have the armature inside the sculpture. And that way you can still use the armature as a tool, but you don't have to worry about it ruining the sculpture, which it will do if you're using water-based clay. Water-based clay is just an armature, doesn't usually work. You can also use, I've seen people use paper armatures for water-based clay, something that'll burn out, paper and masking tape or things that you can burn out during the firing process. So yeah, that's an issue with the type of clay that you're using. And that's why with most students I recommend a non-dry modeling clay, because it can be reused over and over again and it doesn't dry out. So you're not trying to finish the sculpture before it dries or anything like that. But I know not everybody, oil-based clays are a little bit more expensive and they're not as easily accessible in some places. So if you can only get water-based clay, then you just have to change the way you approach the sculpture. Saying thank you, your advice is so helpful. Glad to hear it. Yeah, I hope that the things that I go over can help somebody in some way at some point, because I think it's a great thing to learn to sculpt. It's a great thing to be creative and work with your hands to make beautiful things. Even if you're not sculpting, that's making beautiful things is a worthwhile pursuit, no matter what you're doing. No matter what your craft is, even if you're just a builder or a construction worker or a homemaker, whatever you're doing, if you can make it beautiful and take pride in your work, then you just make everything better. Gonna build out the head a little bit more. Let's see, this neck is still pretty thin. So some areas are tight, like it's hard to get into that area right there, so I'm just taking a little piece of clay on the knife, and then I'm going to kind of reach in, let's see, and place that piece of clay and then kind of just press it in. Even with that knife, it's kind of hard angle to get in. Let me grab another tool. What I probably should have done first was build out the details of the head and neck before I did the arms, so that I'm not running into this problem where I'm trying to add clay to an inside area that's close to a bunch of other areas. But that's okay. We're just gonna make it work. That's what we have tools for. We can't get in. Somebody says, sorry if this is a dumb question, but if you decide you want to keep a sculpture made from oil-based clay, can it be fired in a kiln? I'm brand new to this. Be gentle with me. So yeah, that it won't work. It just melts. So like, I warm this clay up by putting it in the oven, and you can just melt this clay entirely, and it just it'll just melt like wax. And so what you want to do is make a mold and cast it. So you can use like a silicone mold, some sort of silicone, and I have videos on making cheap silicone molds on the Proco 3D channel. There's a couple videos that go over that process if you're interested. And the nice thing about making a mold is you can cast several versions of that sculpture, and that way you can have copies of the same sculpture. But mold making is tricky. It's difficult. I almost always make a mistake when I make a mold, and so there's a big learning curve that comes with that. But there are a lot of benefits if you're planning on doing multiple sculptures or multiple casts of the same sculpture. So this clay is primarily for mold making and casting. But yeah, no, it's a good question, and a lot of people, have that same question. But there's other types of clay you can get. So, for example, if you want to invest in a clay that can be permanent, then you can use polymer clay, which can be baked in a normal oven, and it sculpts very similar to oil and wax-based clays. It also doesn't dry out, though it becomes a little bit crumbly. If you haven't worked it for a while, you have to kind of knead it to get it to soften up, and then you can bake it in a normal oven. You don't have to have a kiln, and it hardens to like a firm, almost plastic-like material. So that's polymer clay. You can use epoxy clay, which is a two-part clay that you mix together, and then it becomes hard after a while. And that's another option if you want a clay that you can sculpt with, and then it can become the permanent material. I haven't used epoxy clay, but it's one that I want to use. I have a sculpture series on YouTube that's like the Will It Sculpt series, where I test different materials, and one of the next ones I'd like to do is epoxy clay. And so that one, you just have to be conscientious of the time. You know, it sets up and becomes very hard after half an hour or so, or it starts setting up after half an hour, and then it takes a little while to cure. But then you have a finished sculpture, and you can make it permanent, or it becomes permanent. See, this calf muscle I want to make a little bit more exaggerated the way it's coming out. So he says, is it not as stressful when you only have half an hour to sculpt? Let's see. I guess we're coming up. Oh yeah, we're coming up on an hour. So I find this to be not stressful at all. In fact, the time has kind of flown by. I didn't even know we were almost coming up on an hour. So I've been doing this for about an hour, and it's fun. I really like these sketches. Maybe I'll continue this sketch tomorrow, because it's fun at this stage, and I could count this as a sculpture sketch, but it's fun to get it just a little bit more developed, where you can start to see, a little bit more of the details of the hands and face and things. So maybe I'll continue this one tomorrow. But yeah, it is enjoyable. I don't find sculpting stressful. Well, I guess that's not always true. Some parts of sculpting I find stressful, but these sketches I don't. These are really enjoyable and fun. Maybe that's why I should get the epoxy clay, because then I can do these sketches and then have it done in an hour or so, and then just have a finished sculpture. Okay, I think I'm going to end it there for today. So here's a look at the final sculpture study. And be sure to check out my sculpting courses if you're interested in taking sculpture a little bit more seriously and you want to take an online class that shows you everything that I wish I knew when I started. There's also the PDFs, free PDFs on the Figure Sculpting Fundamentals course, it's like a assignment list. So you go through, you watch the free lessons. It has links to all of the free lessons, and you can just do those. And it's a free PDF. It also has links to the premium lessons, but if you haven't purchased the full premium course, then you can just start with the free stuff. And I hope you do take advantage of that, because it will help you improve your sculptures pretty quickly if you do the assignments and practice regularly, which is the hardest part, is just practicing. But this was fun. What do you guys think? Isn't that cool and a good start to a gesture study? But yeah, I'll try to continue this same one tomorrow. It looks like there's some things that could be fixed and addressed, and it could definitely get a lot better. So we'll see if I can take it a little bit farther tomorrow. There's a couple more questions before we go. I only really found you on YouTube this afternoon, so I'll check out the videos on material before I get started. I'm a new Proco member to start the drawing basics. Oh, that's great. Proco is great, and my sculpting courses over at Proco.com are also a great resource if you really want to be serious about sculpture. Somebody says, I bought the cheap clay from Hobby Lobby that you mentioned in a video. I use it to make patterns for masks now. Thank you for showing us that. Way cheaper than monster clay. Yeah, it's definitely cheaper, and it works great. You know, it's soft, but still works great. Yeah, thank you guys, and hopefully I'll see you again in another live stream or another video soon. As always, I hope you can stay creative and stay productive, and see you around.
Okay, welcome to today's live stream where I'm going to be working on a continuation of yesterday's stream. So I have this started gesture steady sculpture from a single reference of this bodybuilder, Bob Cicherillo, I think. That's probably not how it's pronounced, but that's how I'm going to pronounce it. And so yeah, I'm just going to be continuing this. I was just doing a drawing of this reference, and as just a way to study some things and try to make sure that I'm on the right track. And in this live stream, I'm going to be sculpting. So if you guys have any questions or anything like that, let me know. I'll try to answer those as we're going. Let me just reset this just a little bit. And usually these sessions will be somewhere around half hour is what I'm going for. Though the drawing session was a little bit more because I got kind of caught up into it. But let's see, one of the things that I noticed on the drawing, and I noticed as I finished this yesterday, was that this front pectoralis muscle, major muscle, just has the feeling like it's not stretched as much as it should be. So I want to remove some of the clay from there and try to allow that to have more of that stretched feeling of what I'm seeing. And in this session, I'm just going to be taking, even smaller pieces of clay and selectively choosing where I feel like the clay could go to make the sculpture just a little bit better. And I'll use a knife or other sculpting tool to cut out areas that I feel like are getting in the way. Oh yeah, let me make sure I'm in focus. Okay. I'm gonna pick this up and be able to move it around a little bit more. And I want to go to areas where, like this arm, because I'm observing it from this angle, looks pretty good, but then turn it to the side, it's very two-dimensional. And so I want to think about, okay, if I was observing this person in person and I walked around to the side, what would these muscle masses look like from this side angle? And, where would how thick would it be? I'm thinking that this back would be much thicker than what I have, so I'm going to come around and add some thickness to these. There's two muscular columns that are made of a bunch of muscles that run down the back. So I'm just going to add some meat into that area. Let's see. And you know, it's a process of just trying to look at the reference, observe the reference, and then see where it differs from the sculpture. Okay, so let's see, this glute is coming around, gluteus medius. Let's move this over to the other side a little bit so that my arms aren't as much in the way of the reference. Let's try something like that. Trying to Who says, hi, how are you doing? I'm doing good. I feel good, though it's only 3 days into the New Year's resolution where I'm trying to do more of these live streams. So we'll see if I can keep it up. But as for right now, I feel good. You know, I'm working on these things, and then I'm also doing some stuff to try to fix up the house and the barn, turn that into a studio space so that I can do some in-person workshops. So I'm excited to be making progress on those things. So yeah, I'm doing well. How are you doing? I hope that people watching this are doing well. Let's see, got some more mass. So I'm trying to even up, you know, the sculpture from different angles, make sure that the thicknesses that I would see are in place. There's some areas that I know are a little bit thin, like this back. You know, this back I imagine would be massive, so I want to lay that in. Kind of put this trap that's kind of tucking into the deltoid shoulder muscle, and the way that kind of tucks in, and this shoulder muscle, because it's bent up and back, it's going to be very compressed, and these muscles are going to be compressed, and I want to try to show that. Somebody's asking, did you put a armature or some wire inside the figure? Yeah, absolutely. I like to start with a wire armature that has all of the proportions in place. This is an oil and wax-based clay, so it's not for firing in a kiln. If I was doing natural, like water-based clay, I'd approach it differently, but with this type of clay, I do like to have a wire armature inside, gets all of my measurements in place roughly, and then I can just focus on adding pieces of clay onto that skeleton rather than inventing everything and trying to work out all the measurements. Though, you know, that's fine if that's what you have to do. That's a great thing to be able to do. But when you can measure out a wire armature ahead of time. It just makes the process a lot quicker, you know, and easier, in my opinion. And sculpting's difficult, so anything you can do to make it a little bit easier is going to be very beneficial. It says, sounds like fun. I'm doing good. Jesus has blessed me pretty well. Well, that's great to hear. Glad to hear that. Yeah, we are all so blessed. Let's see, I have to decide what I want this hand on the back to be doing. What I want this this hand back here doing. Maybe I can have it probably like a, oh, I don't know. I'll have to decide. But in the meantime, let me just add a little bit more of these muscles that are kind of twisting around the back. And there would also be some right here that are connecting the sacrum area and the little triangle on the back right above the glutes. That's the sacrum. And then there's some muscles that connect that with the lower back. And so I want to just fill in those areas that I know are going to need to be full of something. Let's see. Then we got these. Let's see, on the front, this shoulder muscle is like right there. Yeah, so let me try to add to that in a way that makes sense. Got the forearm right here. And we got the tricep, which I feel like I haven't built thick enough compared to the reference. So I'm just taking little pieces of clay like that on my thumb and laying those in. Give a little bit more to the bicep as well, which we can see tucked behind that tricep. The human figure is just amazing. It's amazing. Our bodies are amazing. The figures that have been created, been designed for us. Such an exquisite piece of engineering. Fascinating to learn about. Though I need to study up. Maybe this would be a great time to go through and have a reference book with all the names of the muscles and study that as I'm doing this. Let's see. So yeah, this chest right there, the way that it comes down, is a little bit different than what I had. So I want to try to change that. So he says, hello, I found the photo reference, but missing below the right knee. All copier is gonna do a pen sketch of our friend Bob tonight. Yeah, it's a great reference, isn't it? I try to save these types of references on Instagram wherever I see a photo that's just impressive or very artistic, or like in this one, shows the anatomy just very clearly. That's always help when you're just trying to understand the human form. And so this is a great reference for that. Let's see, coming around on this side, trying to think about how would these, everything's squished up. This arm that's tucked back, how would that look? Almost looks like he could be holding like a sword behind him or something like that. That would be a cool way to modify this pose. And who knows, one of my goals for the year was to sculpt a great sculpture in stone. And so every maquette that I'm doing and drawing, I'm thinking like, could this be the piece? And then I also want to do a great oil painting. So great works of art are rare. So that's not an easy thing to attempt, to make one truly great stone sculpture. And realistic, not the abstract stuff that I've done a lot. The abstract stuff is great, it's fun, I think it can be very beautiful, but I want to challenge myself, and so I'm going to try to challenge myself by doing a more realistic stone sculpture. And I have to, with this right here, I'm trying to consider, like, how is this gluteus maximus, the glute muscles, and the gluteus medius, how are they stretching? How are they moving around the joint of the knee as it's bending in this way? And what is that looking like? And this, I imagine that this part of the leg is squished, and so this is going to be wider right here, so I can add some more clay to widen that. Let's see. Somebody says, very inspiring stuff, looking great so far. Well, thank you. Hola, saludos, saludos. Somebody else says, let's see, I'm going to tuck just a little bit of clay in here to make sure that this knee is not bending around. Oh, that's my son James. He wants to come in. But not right now. Not until I finish up this session. Slightly off topic, but still with anatomy. Congrats on your gym goal. I learned most of my anatomy putting together my gym workouts. What's your next goal? So, I was able to, I just put up a video because I think, when you reach a goal, it's good to share it. It's, kind of a reward, and I think it's good for people to see, oh, this person's reaching towards being better. And so, I was able to do that. I was able to do 75-pound dumbbells, which is 34 kilograms, 25 times. 25 reps benching, and so that was the year. I didn't write anything physical down as my goals for this year, but I've been thinking about that I'd like to get back up to be able to do 30 pull-ups. Pull-ups are just a great body weight exercise, and there's something that I try to do at least once a week, some pull-ups, but right now my max is about 25, and it's been that for a while, and so I'm thinking that maybe that's what I'd like to focus on, is increasing my pull-up number. So that maybe that means losing some weight, you know, some of the extra weight that I'm carrying that I don't really need to be. It doesn't really serve any purpose. I probably have, you know, I could probably lose 10 to 15 pounds of fat and be better for it. So I'm thinking that, you know, maybe this will be the official me saying that that's the next milestone that I want to get. I also was trying to get 10 handstand push-ups, and I also was able to do that, but I didn't share that in the video, just because I didn't say, or I didn't record me saying that I was going to try to do the 10, and I didn't want to re-record it, so I just put the bench. But I think that would be a good goal, be able to do 30 pull-ups. I think right now, you know, it's a shame because our country, the United States, has become extremely out of shape, and it is a shame. People say, oh, you shouldn't fat shame. That's like a big thing. It's like, oh, the worst thing you could do is fat shame, but it is a shame. It's a shame when somebody is not reaching their potential. You know, it's a shame because it makes the world. It's not just a you thing. So when you're out of shape, you know, it makes the world a less beautiful place, and it makes your life more difficult. But it also, if you're a parent like I am, I'm a dad of 4 kids, and so it's also about setting an example and letting fitness and exercise and moving and all of that be a part of their life from an early age, and then it's just a part of life. And it's not that difficult challenge to get back into shape or to start exercising, start moving around, because it's just something that you do. And so if you're not exercising, you know, then I think that's one of the good things about New Year's is it's a lot of people recommit to try to exercise regularly. But I would recommend doing that because there's so many benefits mentally and physically. A lot of depression that people suffer from, I think, is really just a lack of movement in our body. When you exercise, when you move your muscles around, it actually releases chemicals that are natural antidepressants. These are natural, like mood-boosting chemicals that you're missing out on if you're not doing some regular exercise. And that was something that I struggled with. Well, I don't know if you call it depression, but let's say mood swings when I was a teenager, and I found that regular exercise really helped to regulate those things naturally. I don't like the idea of taking drugs, where so many people are on drugs nowadays, but I didn't like the idea of doing that, so I would exercise, and I think I'm better for it. Somebody says health shame. Yeah. Yeah, shame has become such a bad word, but it is a shame, you know, when somebody is not reaching their potential, when they become unhealthy, when they are gluttonous and eating too much and not moving enough. You know, it's a shame because you could be healthy. You know, you could be healthier if you just try to be a little bit more disciplined, and so I think it is it's a good thing to say, hey, like you can do a little bit better, you can be a little bit more in shape. And obviously we're not talking about, you know, taking steroids to the point where you can compete in bodybuilding, which at this point, you know, unless you're competing in the natural category, you almost have to be on performance enhancing drugs, which again, I'm not big on drugs or anything like that, so I wouldn't recommend that. But if you could go to the gym, you know, just be in an environment where people expect you to be exercising, you'd be surprised. Like when you're at the gym, it's actually, and well, I should say, if you're at the gym and there's some other people there, then it's actually difficult to do nothing because you're like, well, I'm here. So a big part of it, if you're a person that doesn't exercise, a good goal could be just be in the gym, just be there in that environment. And then, you'll do something, you'll walk on the treadmill or whatever. I recommend lifting weights because that's like moving heavy things is a good way to build muscle, and muscle is what you should have on your body. Not crazy amounts, but building muscle will help in your posture and your longevity. It'll keep your mind working and keep you from getting slower mentally as you age. Muscle's a big part because your brain actually requires a lot of energy, and when you have muscle, your body's able to maintain high energy activities, and so your brain is like the highest energy activity. Just thinking requires quite a bit of energy. And so yeah, I'm definitely pro exercise, try to be fit. It's not easy, especially if you've let yourself get out of shape and trying to get back into it is not an easy thing, but it's worth it. And that's why I like sculpting people, bodybuilders, ballerinas. I think those are, like, most of the images that I save on Instagram are in those two categories, because I think bodybuilders are kind of the peak, like the peak physical masculine, where they're just, these massive muscular figures, and then ballerinas are kind of the in my opinion, kind of the peak feminine, where they're strong, elegant. They and this what would you say, like an elegance, a movement that looks very feminine. And so I think I like saving those icons, those visual representations of masculine beauty and feminine beauty, and then representing those in art. Because I think it's good. I think it's good to say, and very few people will ever look like a bodybuilder or a ballet dancer, because it requires huge amounts of discipline, for one thing. But we can say, like, we can appreciate that beauty, even if it's, beyond our reach. Like, I'll never have this physique, but I can appreciate the beauty of it, and I can learn from it. And I can create artworks that say, you know what, it's a good thing to strive for excellence in whatever the thing is, whatever the field. Somebody says, totally agree. No shame in looking after yourself, especially if you have been responsible for others. I gym 4 to 5 times a week, mostly for mental health. I'd go mad without it, better than any drug. Yeah, definitely. Watching live ballet is like watching top athletes, which of course they are. Yeah, ballet. I haven't watched a lot of ballet. I haven't done like live, but I just like when you work at something so hard for so many years, it changes your physical appearance, and you see that in ballet dancers, and you see that in you see it in gymnasts, in swimmers and all kinds of athletes, bodybuilders, that it physically changes you. The hard work that you do physically changes you in a way that makes you a more interesting person. And that's a question I get sometimes, usually from women that'll ask, "Oh, why don't you have more?" What would they say? More variety in your figures, like sculpt more overweight figures, and to that I say, because it's not a good thing, and I want to share. It's not a good thing to be out of shape, and well, there's nothing wrong with being old. So we become less physically strong and less attractive as we age, but there's a noble way to age and a way to do it that's healthy and okay, and we don't have to accept that we're going to become out of shape. You know, a lot of the effects of aging are primarily just muscle loss. And so if you just are willing to do the work to retain as much as you can for as long as you can, then you'll be in better shape than most. And people know it, you know, people that are overweight, they know, you know, that you can say, oh, body positivity and fat acceptance and all of that, but deep down they know that they're not in the shape that they'd like to be, and so I think a better thing to do is just encourage them. You know what, you can change, you can, you know, work a little bit harder, you can change habits, you can modify your lifestyle to a way that's more conducive to flourishing and whatever it is that you're doing. And we only get one body, so we should take care of it as best we can. But it is, it's a hard thing to hear. And I think, you know, the reason that it's hard is because we know it's true. You know, usually things, you know, if somebody says something that's absurdly, ridiculously false about us, you know, we don't find that very offensive. But when somebody says, you know what, you've been gaining a little bit of weight, or you've been getting out of shape, or you've been doing this or that, and it's true, and we know it's true, that's when, you know, that's offensive. You know, that's when it becomes very difficult to tolerate, when somebody's saying something that we know to be true, and we know that we should be better than what we are, and that's when we want to say, you know what, maybe that person should be silenced because they're saying something that offends me. So that's why things like the, you know, freedom of speech is so important, because often it's the things that are true that are the most offensive. But sometimes we need people to say harsh truths, which is it's difficult to be that person. Nobody wants to be the person that has to point out something that's obvious and true that others don't want to accept. Let's see, how are we doing on time? We're about half an hour in. So yeah, let's just, let's keep going. Let's go ahead and maybe I'll try to develop the features a little bit more. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit more. Try to make sure that you guys are seeing what's happening. Somebody's saying, I'm amazed you can sculpt to that size. Would it not be easier half that the size again. So like maybe this size, yeah, it'd probably be a little bit easier. But it'd probably be, I think this is, what is this? Like 6-inch armature, or like, what is that? Like 12 centimeters or something. Yeah, this is a small sculpture. If I would have known that I was going to spend a little bit longer on this, I might have grabbed a little bit larger of an armature. I had some larger armatures, some 12-inch ones. Those are a great size to work with as well. But the nice thing about working small is it kind of forces you to just choose especially when you're working small and by hand, you just have to choose the most important elements of the sculpture and put those in, and then you have to kind of just ignore the other stuff. So there is something about simplifying that I do like. But yeah, if I was to do this again, I might have grabbed a 12-inch, done it twice, twice the size it is. But it does use a lot less clay. For sure. Have you ever made an action figure of someone you know? No, I don't think I've done like sculptures. So like this guy that's standing back here, that was kind of I guess you could call that like an action figure. But I think of them more as, gesture studies or things like that. I wouldn't say that I've done action figure sculptures. Somebody says, do you have a streaming schedule? No, and I don't think, I've tried to do a streaming schedule in the past, and it just, I think it makes it less likely, because then if I'm not ready or something, then I just won't do the stream. Whereas if I let it be a little bit more loose, then I think I'm more likely to actually do streams more often. So I'll try to do them around this time. So I'll try to do a drawing live stream and a sculpting live stream, once a day. But if I'm working on a project or it becomes too much, then I'll take a step back. So I'm not going to let it get in the way if I'm like doing a bigger project or a commission or something. But I'm going to try to do these more often and see. One of my goals for 2024, which I did not reach, was getting 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. And I don't know, I don't know what type of content that I should be focusing on, whether it's lives or more polished videos or shorts or what. I like longer form content, so I'm just kind of feeling things out and trying to do more of everything. So I do want to grow my channel, because that's how I advertise for my courses and for my ebooks, which is how I make a living. And so I want to be better at doing those things. But it's all, it's a learning process. There's a learning curve with all of it. But I will try to be more consistent with live streams. I'll do that for a little bit, and if I fall off the consistency and stop doing those regularly, then then you can comment and say, hey, what happened to the live streams? You were gonna do that. And then if I see that type of comment, then I'll probably get back into it. But because, you know, these live streams, there's only like 10 or so people watching usually. But if I could get it to where it's like a serious stream, and there's, you know, more people commenting, and it's maybe I have topics that I'm talking about that are actually interesting on top of doing a live stream, I think that would be a cool thing to build. Though though I guess I haven't succeeded in this one. I'm trying to be less, well, I don't know if I'd say that I'm trying to be less political, but what should I say? I'm trying to be more focused on, you know, what I actually do, the way that I make money, which is right now, that is, you know, teaching people how to sculpt. And I enjoy talking about politics and religion and all of that other stuff. And what I didn't like was that it felt like we were getting into an environment where artists felt like they could not say, especially conservative artists felt like they could not say what they actually believed, and they had to pretend otherwise. And I was like, well, screw that. I'm gonna come out and I'm gonna be a conservative, like openly conservative, openly Christian. But I think that the culture is kind of turning back and becoming more open to a difference of opinion on a lot of things. And so I just didn't want to be part of the problem. I felt like part of the problem was artists and other creatives staying out of politics, and that was a problem because then the people on the other side get emboldened and then they try to make it so that, you know, these platforms try to censor, and that's what I was against. And so, but I feel like the tide is kind of turning, and now I can be more focused on what I'm actually trying to do, which is help people sculpt. Somebody says, once I get settled into my Proco drawing basics course, I'm going to buy your figure course. Gotta go. Thank you for your time today. Yeah, thank you for participating and for all the comments. It's been really, it's a joy when people participate and ask things. So hopefully I'll see you again soon in another live stream. And so yeah, we're just trying to make things better, trying to create beautiful, interesting things. But it is, it's an interesting question on art, and should artists be political, and can you separate the art from the artist and all of that? There's, if I disagree with an artist, can I still learn from him or support them? And I'm hoping that we're moving back to a more, sane place where we can say, you know what, I don't agree with everything that you say or all of your beliefs, but I'm learning from you, and so I want to keep learning. But yeah, I did not like the feeling when it felt like the world was becoming a place where people couldn't say what they believed for fear of losing their job or losing their following or anything like that. So I definitely don't want to self-censor. That's kind of what I'm trying to say, that I didn't want to be somebody that was self-censoring, because I feel like that's a form of cowardice. But there's a difference between self-censoring and just saying, you know what, I think I'm going to try to be more focused on, my mission, my goal to help people. And that might mean removing some of the content or things that aren't focused on that. Some areas like here under the chin are a little bit hard to get to as I'm working by hand, so I'll just take a piece of clay and then use the tool to press that into place. No problem. Somebody's saying, what type of videos do you think would be fun to make? Well, that's a great question, and a question that I'm trying to figure out. I like to do in the shorter video where I was talking about, what was it, a beginner sculpting tip for texturing, and it's just kind of a short video where I'm given one tip, and it's more concise, and it's just like I think it was like a 5-minute video, just saying like, change this on your sculptures to make better sculptures. So that was a recent video that I did that I kind of liked that because it didn't require a ton of editing. It was, concise and kind of to the point, and so that's maybe something that I want to try to do more of. So there's those types of content. I'd also like to do, full, like, this is me creating a work of art from start to finish, concept to finished product. And especially because I want to do a great stone sculpture, so hopefully at some point I'll be able to do that. And I have some commission projects that are coming up that should be kind of fun. There's a company that I'm planning on working with that has a type of clay that they want me to do a video about, and the clay is kind of cool because you can sculpt in it. It's like a wax. You can sculpt in it, and then you can send it off to a foundry, and they can, without making a mold, they can just cast it in bronze. They can melt out the sculpture because you can do the entire sculpture with a material that can be melted away. So but it's meant to be sculpted. It's not as hard as a wax, as like bronze casting wax or anything like that. And so that's kind of a fun collaboration that hopefully will be coming up at some point. And I'd love to do more of those. I like the videos where I try different materials, and so if you have suggestions of materials, I try to save when people comment, like, oh, you should try sculpting with this or that material. Though those ones I have to purchase the materials, and so sometimes, right now my YouTube income, the money that I make just from my own YouTube channel is like it's like $100 a month. Well, no, it's like $150 or $200 a month at the higher end, but it's not, it's not anything crazy. But if I could create content that was fun and watchable and that gets more people excited to watch somebody sculpt, then, maybe I can increase that. If I could 10x my YouTube channel, then I'd be making about as much from creating content as I'm making from selling my online courses, which are now hovering at around, well, I guess I'd have to do a little bit more than 10x my YouTube views, but that is something that I'd like to do, and I'm trying to work on. And then there was a project. Let's see, there was something else that came to mind of a type of content. Oh man, it just slipped from my mind. I had it and then I lost it. But yeah, if you guys can think of any types of content. Oh, I remember. So it was an idea to sculpt like characters from either from like the Bible or from Greek mythology or even like fictional characters from stories, and to sculpt them as they're described, like my version of the description that they have in a book. So I could take some of my favorite characters and create a sculpture that's kind of based on that character. And I thought that would be a fun like mini series or topic for a couple videos, to do these sculpture sessions of characters. But yeah, if you guys think of things that you think, oh, this would be a topic that you might or a type of sculpture. Though people all the time are like, hey, sculpt, what do they say, sculpt anime, or sculpt some, what is it, roadblocks characters or things like that. And I'm just not interested in that. I pretty much honed down the style of sculpting that I want to do in clay, and so if it's like a different style or something like that, I'm not that interested in trying that. But if it's like a new material, I like that kind of stuff, or if it's something that I can do in a style that I already am familiar with, then that's something that I enjoy. Let's see, this one. I don't know how much I'll get into the details of the face. And I think we'll just do about an hour, and then we'll look at the sculpture once the hour is done. Sometimes I need to grab the piece of clay and then press it on with the tool in some of these areas where it's harder to get into. It feels like he's wearing a mask now. I don't like that too much. I wonder if anybody knows like a website or a resource for playing like classical music during live streams, but that's royalty free, so that I don't get in trouble. I tried playing some music during one live stream, and then when I was trying to edit the content and stuff, then I got, you just have to be careful with that. So I wonder if there's a resource for like classical type music for just these lulls in the conversation, so I don't feel like I have to be filling everything up with words, a lot of big words. Hey Andrew, is there any advice you'd give for someone who wants to make their first make this sculpture a career? Well, man, you know, somebody else was asking about that, and you know, what would I say? Oh man, I would say, like, don't expect it to be easy to monetize sculpting. It's possible, but what I would recommend is finding, you know, building a skill of something that is more easily marketable, and then doing sculpture on the side until you're able to turn that sculpting into a more full-time thing. And that's not what I did. Like, I went to school for sculpting, and then I got out of school and was really trying to make sculpting my main thing. And most of the income that I make now is not from sculpting. Like, I do one sculpting show a year, and that usually gets me between like $3,000 to $5,000. Well, let's see. Yeah, I guess like $3,000 to $5,000. All the sculptures that I sell from that, and then I do commissions every once in a while. But most of the income comes from online courses, so teaching online. And so even with, but I guess I haven't invested that much. I haven't invested enough time in creating a portfolio and going to galleries or selling on places like Etsy to know. But I would start with that right away. So start selling stuff right away. Find something that in the meantime, you know, is more marketable, is more in demand, and ideally something that's flexible. So if you can do a job that allows you to sculpt while you're there, like I know a lot of people like to do things like write, where they would work at a hotel at night, and they could write their book, and then they would just help people as they come in, but you weren't expected to do a lot of stuff, and you could actually work on your own projects in that job. Now, not very many jobs are like that, so you'd have to actually search out jobs that are conducive to actually being creative on the job. Teaching, you know, maybe you can actually get into teaching, though a lot of teachers say, like, oh, it kind of zaps out the creativity, like if you're teaching in a traditional public school or something, that you don't have as much time for your own projects because you're working on grading and things like that. So but I'd say it's tricky. Like, don't expect it to be easy, and be willing to work really hard, and like be so good that they can't ignore you. Kind of an attitude where you're just like, you know what, I'm just going to be so incredibly talented and great at sculpting, and my sculptures are going to be so impressive that people won't be able to ignore me. Like, they'll have to pay attention. And if you can do that, then there'll be a market. There's always a market for the best. You know, the best at their craft, whatever that craft is. But I'd say anything creative is difficult to monetize. Like, that's basically the definition of creativity, being in the arts, is like, hey, this is difficult to monetize, but if you figure it out, you know, the upside could be very big. So if you become, you know, the number one, the highest selling sculpture in the world, you know, makes a ridiculous amount of money, and does sculptures that, you know, and has a whole team of people to help him create his sculptures and things like that. But just realize that most people don't make it that far fact, most people that go into sculpting, that's why I wouldn't necessarily recommend studying sculpting in like college like I did, because most people that do that in college end up doing something else. It's kind of a useless degree. Just learn to sculpt. Just learn the craft, and then just start selling right away. Look up things that are sculpture related that you could make and sell on places like Etsy and eBay, and just start, and then try to find things that sell, things that are popular. You can do it, but don't expect it to be easy, is I guess what I'm trying to say, which maybe is not that encouraging as somebody that teaches this. Maybe I should have a more rose-tinted outlook on it. But I'll be honest, it's been difficult. It's been difficult providing for a family, trying to do something that I enjoy so much. Financially, we had to move out of Utah because Utah became too expensive. I couldn't afford to live next to family because I was doing this creative thing. Whereas if I just had a normal career, maybe we would still be in Utah, still be able to be close to family. I liked Utah a lot. But that was the sacrifice I made for doing something that I would be miserable if I wasn't doing. Like, I'd be miserable if I wasn't sculpting. If I wasn't doing something creative. I have to be working on something creative. So yeah, I guess maybe that's not that encouraging, but I'd say be realistic about it, and then just start selling stuff right away, because the sooner you make your first couple of sculptures and start to see what people are interested in, and a couple of sales, the sooner you can, build a portfolio around that and start to develop a style, and I'd also recommend pursuing excellence and pursuing knowledge of sales and marketing and what galleries are looking for, or whatever format you want to go into. Learn about that. What have you experienced in terms of learning the figure? Well, there's always more to learn. So that's kind of my experience, and so you just have to kind of enjoy the process of learning about the figure. It is fascinating, and it's a great thing to be able to study, and I love it, and that's something, along with doing these live streams, I'm going to take them as kind of studying sessions, to take one picture like this and then study the figure from it, or to take some of the art books that I have and to maybe dive deep and do some sketches from those, or do some sculptures from those. And so these live streams are my chance to really enjoy the process of learning about the figure. And that doesn't, there's no finish line for that. It's always, you can always learn a little bit more and be a little bit better, and understand a little bit more about the figure and what's happening. So I'd say get some good books, good anatomy books, and then just start learning. And don't stop. That's a good idea of a nice series I'd like to watch and to engage with you, with your fans. You can have them vote on the next character to sculpt. Yeah, I think that would be a fun series, doing different characters from the Bible, or from fiction, or from like wherever it is, and then doing a video on like the description, and then sculpting that character. And maybe they don't have to be super, in-depth or long sculpts, because sculptures can quickly take a lot of time, but maybe they can be quick studies just like this one. That's a couple hours or things like that. That could be fun. Hello, what kind of clay are you using right now? This is Chavant NSP clay, Chavant NSP medium clay, and it's oil and wax based. And so that's the type of clay that I'm using. I'm just realizing now on the live stream that there's the blue lines that are around, so I can't, if I change the settings, it'll end the stream. But we're actually, this stream is ending right now, so, or we're at where I should be ending. So I'm going to set this down and give you a final look at where the sculpture's at right now. So here's a look at that, at the process, where we're at on the process. Let's see, this needs to come down a little bit more. And so this is after 2 hours of sculpting a gesture study from a single reference image. Really fun sculpture. And maybe I'll keep working on it. Maybe I'll start something new next session. But that's what it's looking like right now. So be sure to check out the links in the video description for my online courses and ebooks on the figure. Those are really helpful for artists and people interested in sculpting, and they really help me out if you can purchase those ebooks. That helps me immensely as a creator, and so I appreciate it. And I hope you guys can stay creative and stay productive, and I'll hopefully see you again soon in another video. Have a wonderful day. Gonna try again and see if we can't find myself. Okay, now it seems to be going through. So, welcome to this live stream session. In this, I'm going to be continuing the sculpture on this little guy, this, well, big guy, or however you want to look at it, but small sculpture. If you guys have questions, please let me know, and I'll just kind of try to be explaining things as I go. So, yeah, let's keep going. In this one, I want to work more on the details of the portrait. I'll try to start to develop the hands and things. I'm gonna pull this forward to put the hand on more on the back of the neck, which is, somebody mentioned during the last live that's probably where it is, and I agree that I had it a little bit farther back. Though I could have, it's my sketch, so I can change it if I feel like I want to do a different pose. I was thinking it would be cool if he was holding like a sword back here, maybe a shield up here, and then we did some sort of warrior pose, but I don't know if I'll do that. Let's see. I'm going to actually move things to where it's more comfortable, and then see.
Make sure I'm got the correct exposure or the correct focus and everything. And last time, the last live stream I did, I noticed once the live stream was done, or close to the end, I noticed that the focus peaking was going through the stream, so there was like blue lines on a bunch of different stuff. So that's what happens when I tried to change some of the settings, but I forgot to take off the focus peaking for the live stream. Okay, let's see. Let's bend this in a little bit. And with this, let's just make a, so he's kind of got his fingers open in the reference, but let's do it like a fist. I imagine that he could be like holding a shield here, and then maybe a sword in the other hand, if I was going to make this a more like an actual finished work of art, which I've been thinking about doing. There's actually a commission that's coming up where I'm planning on doing a similar like bodybuilder type pose, but or bodybuilder type physique, but doing the character, either a character from the Bible like Samson, who's like the warrior that's able to, like, he's basically promised by God that he won't be defeated as long as he doesn't cut his hair. And he's just like, nobody can take him down the whole, like he faces like an army of 500 or something and kills everybody with the jawbone of a donkey. And so that's kind of a cool character. And then there's also, or from Greek mythology, there's Hercules. So I was thinking of doing one of those, so we'll see. But I wanted to do some sort of like bodybuilder type. And that's going to be in collaboration with a company that wanted me to do a sculpture promoting a new type of wax clay that they have. It's meant to be sculpted like clay, but then you can send in the clay sculpture just how it is, and then they can fire it in a kiln by just basically dipping the sculpture in a ceramic shell, and then they melt out the wax, so you just get a single copy, but it's a lot cheaper than paying to have it made into a mold and everything. So it was an interesting idea, and if everything goes according to plan, I'll be collaborating with that company sometime in the next couple months, if they go through with it. Nothing's set in stone, but it is the plan. Now I'm just kind of moving things around. Let's give an indication of the drapery a little bit more than what we have. Let's see, I'm going to zoom in a little bit more. And the tricky thing is just making sure I don't go off camera. So at this point, I'm just kind of moving around and trying to find areas where I feel like it still needs some clay or some development. And I don't want to go through and texture this whole thing. This is kind of just a study, a small study of the figure. And so I'm not going to go through and texture the whole thing, but I do want to just have it be a complete study. So for me, that means I'm coming through and starting to add in the details of the hands and feet. Somebody was asking about if I could do a video simplifying the feet, so maybe I'll have a video just specifically on sculpting the feet, which, like the hands, can be difficult. It's a complex area. And so maybe I'll do a video talking about that in a little bit. But basically, you know, you're just looking for simple shapes, the outline from one angle, and then, well, I guess you can't say that because we don't even have a lot of the visual information from there, so you really do have to invent a lot of this information, which can be very tricky when you're sculpting the feet or the hands. You know, inventing is difficult, and then inventing one of the most difficult areas of the body is just another layer of complexity. If you guys have questions or topics you'd like me to discuss, feel free to let me know about those. So he says, may I ask what kind of clay this is? Yeah, this is Sculpting NSP medium. It's actually a little bit of hard mixed in with the medium because I prefer a little bit firmer of a clay. It helps when you're doing these smaller sculptures and once you're working on the details, and I'm like handling the sculpture quite a bit, turning the sculpture around, and so when you don't want to mess up the details, it does help if there's a little bit of firm mixed in. But for most people, the medium is plenty hard, and I actually warm it up and soften it up a little bit at the beginning so that it's easier to work with. So this is oil and wax based. It's not for like firing in a kiln. It's for working over time, so it doesn't dry out. It's for mold making. If you want to make it permanent, you have to make a mold. So, but I usually recommend this type of non-dry modeling clay for students, just because they can reuse it over and over again for different studies, and so it's good for practicing for these little like gesture studies. Sculpting NSP medium. It's a clay that I've really liked. But I mean, the clay isn't, it's not that important. A great sculptor can do pretty much whatever he wants with whatever type of clay is available. But I do have an affinity for this particular brand. Nice, thank you. I took a ceramics in college and recently got an air dry sculpture clay. Since I don't have a kiln access, this is fascinating to watch. Oh, that's great. Yeah, air dry clay also can work. I haven't used a lot of it because I assumed it was similar to like ceramic clay, but maybe I should give it a try. And then they say, I agree, the master never blames the tools. Yeah. I mean, there's better and worse types of clay, and if the clay is not treated properly, like if you're using a natural water-based clay, like it can be too dry, and that can be very, very frustrating in the beginning stages because it's hard and hard to work with, and then you have to try to hydrate the clay, which can be difficult. So there's things that can be annoying, but for the most part, you just got to work with what you have and learn how to work with whatever material you're using. You get used to it, and becomes, what you're familiar with becomes, I guess, not a distraction as you're working. So that's the goal with. Though I do like, I like trying different types of clay and things, but you don't want to be thinking about the clay necessarily. You just want to be thinking about the sculpture. If the clay is tricky to work with, or you don't understand it, then it becomes another obstacle. So it is good to have, a decent type of clay that you're comfortable with. But yeah, the skills of actually moving the clay around are what really make the difference. If you guys haven't checked out my sculpting courses and you're interested, I try to remember to plug those. That's how I make a living, so forgive the repetition. But it's a great resource for learning to sculpt. So if you want to take an online class and has assignments, and you can submit those assignments over at Proca.com underneath the lessons. So you learn, you do the assignment, then you sculpt it, and then if you submit images of it, then I can critique it over at Proca.com. And so it's a great resource for anybody that wants to take on figurative sculpting in traditional clay, which I think is a great thing to try. It's really fun, and I enjoy it a lot. So if you're interested, I hope you check that out. If you're interested just in figurative art in general, you might check out my ebooks, An Artist's X-Ray Vision, the male figure, and there's one on the female figure as well. And those are just a series of helpful diagrams for drawing, painting, or sculpting people, things that I've found to be helpful, like little visual aids that I've picked up over time, and so that's a great resource. And those ebooks are like $10, and so helps support the channel and this type of content, and I appreciate anybody that invests in those. So let's see. Okay, coming to. So I've kind of got the feet and hands a little bit more established. They don't feel as undeveloped as they did when I started, which was kind of the goal, to develop those areas. Okay, I think I'm going to end it about there. Well, I'll show you guys what the sculpture's looking like right now. Let's move things so that you guys can see a little bit better. So here's what it's looking like at this stage, and this is probably where I'll leave it. This is probably the last live stream that I'll do specifically on this one, but it's a great. Actually, it feels a little bit. Let me move this foot out, something like that. But it feels like the good start of a design for maybe a future sculpture. And so maybe I'll take this and then do it a little bit larger of a scale so that I can work more on the details, and then maybe, who knows, maybe eventually I'll transfer it into stone or something. One of my goals for the year was doing a great stone sculpture, and so maybe doing something like this where I really have a chance to try to develop the anatomy and do a physique that's impressive, and a stone sculpture that can stand with some of the great stone sculptors throughout history is one of my goals. So we'll see if that happens. But yeah, thank you guys for watching, and as always, I hope you can stay creative and stay productive. Hopefully I'll see you again soon in another video, and I'll try to do these live streams every day, just a little bit of drawing, because I'm trying to get back into drawing as an artist. That's a good skill. And then also a little bit of a sculpting session, whether that's this type of stuff, or somebody asked if I could do a study of the foot, so maybe tomorrow I'll do a more in-depth kind of quick sketch of the foot and talk about that a little bit. So make sure you're subscribed to the channel and like the video, and hit the notification bell if you'd like to be notified on these types of live streams. And yeah, thank you guys. See you later.